There's a moment in every awakened person's life when the question becomes unavoidable. Am I here to serve the light, or was I chosen by the dark? And not in the way we've been conditioned to think. Not as good versus evil. Not as right versus wrong. Something deeper. Something older. A riddle buried inside your soul since the moment you arrived here. Most people walk through life never asking it. But if you're watching this video, it means something in you already knows the answer is waiting, and it's not what you were told. We've been taught to fear the dark and worship the light, avoid shadow and chase purity. But what if that very programming was designed to keep you disconnected from your power? What if the path you were born to walk is not about choosing one over the other, but about remembering the truth behind both? You see, the chosen ones are not always radiant angels of peace. Some of them are forged in fire. Some of them carry shadows so deep, their very presence forces others to confront what they've been avoiding. And that's not a mistake. That's a function of frequency. The first sign that reveals your true chosen path is this: you've never fit cleanly into spiritual categories. You've tried, you've meditated, you've journaled, you've practiced light work, but still, something inside you felt out of place. Like you were pretending to be something that didn't fully resonate. And no matter how hard you tried to be high vibrational, your soul kept pulling you into the places others were afraid to go. Pain, shadow, depth, truth. That wasn't dysfunction. That was your path calling. Because some of us weren't sent here to bypass the dark. We were sent here to transform it from the inside. The second sign is that you attract extremes. Intensity follows you like a shadow. Your relationships are all or nothing. Your emotional states are oceanic. Your life doesn't move in straight lines, it swings like a pendulum. That's not chaos. That's the mark of someone whose field is touching both polarities. You are not here to live in balance. You are here to embody both ends of the spectrum until balance becomes you. Every high you've tasted, every low you've survived has been an initiation, a test, a code, preparing you to carry a voltage of spiritual energy that few can handle. The third sign is this: you've experienced profound rejection or isolation not because of what you did, but because of what you are. Your presence alone disrupts illusions. You don't even have to speak. People either open around you or shut down. That's because your field is catalytic. You activate what's hidden, not by accident, but as a design. You didn't come here to entertain. You came here to awaken. And some souls are not ready for that. They'll call you too intense, too dark, too much. But that's only because they haven't yet met those parts within themselves. And that brings us to the fourth sign. You've been pulled into the underworld, not once, but repeatedly. Not just sadness, not just hard times, descent, ego death, emotional collapse, the kind of pain that strips language from your mouth and leaves you with nothing but breath. Most people think those moments mean something went wrong. But for the dark or light chosen ones, that descent is sacred. It's how we retrieve parts of our soul that were buried under programming. It's how we gain access to the deeper gifts. You weren't being punished, you were being initiated. The fifth sign is subtle, but unmistakable. You've started to remember who you were before this life. not as a fantasy, not as a story, as a sensation, a frequency. You walk into certain temples, hear ancient chants, or visit sacred lands and something in your DNA vibrates. You don't even know why, you just know. That's not imagination, that's memory. Because your mission didn't begin here. You've been doing this work across lifetimes, and now it's time to integrate what was scattered. But here comes the sixth sign, and it's the most uncomfortable. You've caught glimpses of your own darkness, and it terrified you. You've seen what you're capable of when you're out of alignment. You felt the power you carry when you're not conscious of it. Maybe it showed up as manipulation. Maybe as intensity that overwhelmed others. Maybe as a rage you couldn't explain, and you hated yourself for it. But what if I told you that what you saw was not evil, it was raw energy, untrained, unrefined, unclaimed? The truth is, your dark is not here to be erased. It's here to be mastered, because the same energy that can destroy can also liberate, heal, create. And that brings us to the final sign. You no longer fully resonate with either polarity. Not completely light, not completely dark. You start to feel like you're walking in between. And that's because you are. You are the bridge, the living paradox, the embodiment of what happens when a soul passes through both ends of the spectrum and comes out whole. You don't need to choose sides. You are the side that connects them. And that means your path is not about becoming more light or more dark. It's about becoming more true. So I ask you now, what part of yourself have you been denying in order to fit someone else's definition of spiritual? What truth have you silenced to appear more light? What power have you buried because it didn't look pure? Because the moment you stop trying to be what you think you're supposed to be and start allowing what you actually are, you step into your chosen path with clarity. And that clarity is your sword, your compass, your permission to become. You were never meant to be light or dark. You were meant to be the force that remembers both and uses them as tools for awakening. There's a hidden truth so few are willing to say out loud. The sacred split inside us, the one that makes us question whether we're walking the light path or the dark path, is not actually about morality. It's about integration. The division was programmed into us, not to help us grow, but to keep us fragmented. Because as long as we believe we have to choose light and reject darkness, or choose shadow and reject light, we never become whole. And a fragmented being is easy to control. But a being who integrates their full spectrum, that being becomes sovereign. And sovereignty is the one thing the system cannot predict, cannot manipulate, cannot own. When you begin to awaken to your true path, whether it resonates more with the dark or the light, you'll realize that the split was never about good versus evil. It was about awareness versus amnesia. Do you remember who you are when you act? Or are you moving from programming? Are you conscious in your rage, in your love, in your silence, or are you reacting to a script you didn't write? You see, the chosen path, whether dark or light, is not defined by how it looks from the outside. It's defined by the level of conscious embodiment behind it. You can move through the world as a warrior of silence or a disruptor of patterns. You can be a healer cloaked in shadow or a truth speaker wrapped in light. Neither is superior. What matters is, are you awake inside your actions? Because that's the real war. It's not between good and evil. It's between authenticity and illusion. Between the version of you that was built to survive and the version of you that came to transcend. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Most of what we believe to be light is actually compliance, programmed kindness, performative compassion. We've been taught to be nice, to be agreeable, to be soft, even when our soul is screaming for truth. But truth isn't always soft. Sometimes truth is a blade. Sometimes truth is a storm. And if you were chosen to walk the dark path, your truth may not always make people comfortable. It may shake foundations. It may collapse illusions. It may trigger everything someone's trying to avoid. But that doesn't make it wrong. That makes it real. Others are chosen to walk the light path. Their gift is to hold space, to radiate clarity, to guide without pressure. But even they must face their own shadows, because light that hasn't faced its darkness becomes spiritual bypass. It becomes empty positivity. It becomes a mask of love, worn to avoid conflict. And that's not real love. Real love includes accountability. Real love includes truth. Real love is not afraid of shadow. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with this. Your chosen path is not based on preference, it's based on resonance. It's not about what you like. It's about what your soul remembers. When you hear ancient chants that make your skin tingle, when you walk into places that make your body feel like it's lived there before, when you speak words you've never studied but somehow know they're not hallucinations, they're activations. Your soul is whispering, this is who you've always been. And when you stop resisting that truth, your path begins to open, not because it's easy, but because it's finally aligned. You stop chasing clarity and become clarity. You stop seeking signs and become the signal. You realize that the choice isn't between light or dark, it's between forgetting and remembering. And here's the strange part. The deeper you go into your true path, the less you care about labels. You stop needing to define yourself. You stop needing to explain your frequency. You're not light. You're not dark. You're truth in motion. You're the force that walks between worlds. Sometimes you heal. Sometimes you destroy. Sometimes you create. Sometimes you rest. But every time you're aware. And awareness is what turns chaos into creation. So let me ask you something difficult but necessary. What part of your soul have you been suppressing to appear more safe? What truth have you buried under spiritual language to avoid being judged? What power are you afraid to claim because it doesn't look like the version of light you were taught? Because that's where your path begins, not in pretending to be pure, but in having the courage to be real. And realness is messy. It's raw. It's multidimensional. But it's also magnetic. When you become real, the universe stops testing you and starts responding to you. You stop attracting lessons and start attracting assignments. You stop surviving and you start transmitting. That's what the real chosen ones do. We don't just heal. We transmit frequency through our being. We walk into a room and shift the field. Not because we're trying, but because we're clear. And clarity is power. But that clarity can only come through the sacred split. It can only be born when you stop trying to be one thing and start allowing yourself to be exactly what you are, a bridge. a paradox, a being who remembers that fire can burn, but it can also forge gold. And once you realize that, every challenge you've ever faced starts to look different. The betrayals, the collapses, the dark nights. They weren't detours, they were refinements. They were carving out the space in your field for your true essence to land. Because your essence is not light or dark. Your essence is cosmic, and it moves through polarity, not in opposition to it, but in mastery of it. That's what you're here for, not to choose a side, but to become the force that remembers the whole and lives it unapologetically. We've been taught to define ourselves by personality. I'm this type of person, I'm that kind of soul, I'm light, I'm dark, I'm quiet, I'm intense. But what if I told you none of that actually matters? What if the real truth is this: you were chosen not for who you appear to be, but for what your energy transmits into the field? You were chosen because your frequency carries a code that can't be spoken, can't be written, and can't be replicated. It can only be felt. This is why the world has tried to confuse you. This is why you've struggled with identity, with labels, with fitting in. Because you weren't meant to be understood through personality. You were meant to be recognized by resonance. And resonance doesn't speak the language of logic. It speaks the language of activation. Some people meet you and instantly feel something shift. They don't know why. It's not your words. It's not your behavior. It's your field. Your field carries an ancient signature. And souls who are ready will feel it. Souls who are not will reject it. That's not personal. That's energetic law. And this is where your true path begins to crystallize. Not in what you say or even what you do, but in what you transmit. That's why the shadow tests were so brutal. That's why the light didn't always feel safe. Because the universe wasn't evaluating your personality. It was refining your signal. Every betrayal, every collapse, every ego death, it was stripping away the static, or the noise, the masks, until your core frequency could finally come through loud, clear, and unmistakable. And now that it's here, you begin to see the truth. You were not chosen to be light or dark. You were chosen to be undeniable, a tuning fork for others to remember who they are, a living code that awakens the memory buried in human DNA. You walk into a room and shift the electromagnetic field, not because you're trying, but because you've become the vibration. But here's the paradox. The clearer your signal becomes, the more resistance you may face. People who haven't cleaned their own static will feel uncomfortable around you. They won't know why. They'll project. They'll push you away. They'll try to explain you through their own limited lens. And you must let them. Because you're not here to be understood. You're here to be felt. You're here to be a catalyst. And catalysts, by nature, shake the structure. So ask yourself, have I been diluting my frequency to be digestible? Have I been making myself smaller to avoid triggering people? Have I been adjusting my vibration to match the room when I was sent here to change the room entirely? Because when you stop doing that, when you stop bending to be safe, you become dangerous to the illusion. Not dangerous in a violent way, dangerous in a disruptive way. Your clarity becomes a mirror. Your truth becomes a weapon against programming. Your stillness becomes a roar that cuts through distortion. And that's why you were chosen, not to blend in, but to bend reality. And bending reality doesn't mean snapping your fingers and making gold fall from the sky. It means you vibrate at such a level of alignment that the entire field around you begins to rearrange itself to echo your truth. You stop reacting to the simulation and begin reprogramming it from the inside out. That's what the dark and light paths were preparing you for, not to choose one over the other, but to understand how both are tools. The light reveals. The dark refines. The light expands. The dark grounds. The light shows potential. The dark forges power. And the soul that can hold both without flinching, that soul becomes the bridge between heaven and earth. You are that bridge. And now that you know, it's time to stop hiding it. It's time to stop pretending you're confused. You're not confused. You're remembering. And remembrance is messy. It doesn't come with a manual. It comes in waves. But each wave brings you closer to the truth. You were never meant to walk a single path. You were meant to become the entire landscape. So what does that mean practically? It means you start designing your life based on frequency, not formulas. You stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, what is my field saying? You stop chasing success and start becoming the vibration that naturally attracts it. You stop forcing relationships and start magnetizing people who are coded to walk with you. You stop trying to be light or dark and start being clear. Because clarity is the highest form of power. And clarity doesn't come from answers. It comes from resonance. From the moment your inner truth becomes louder than your outer programming, that's when the path begins to walk itself. That's when the universe starts rearranging around your frequency. That's when the noise falls away and all that's left is the echo of your own soul saying, welcome back. The game is yours now. So let me ask you the final question of this chapter. What would your life look like if you fully embodied the truth that your energy is not a personality but a code? What would you stop tolerating? What would you start transmitting? What would you allow yourself to become? Because now you remember, you were chosen not for what you do. You were chosen for the truth you hold in your field. And once you stop resisting that truth, your very presence becomes prophecy.